Hello, you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
Pretty good win against Sheffield United. A little bit too little too late, perhaps, or is that just being needlessly cynical at a time when it's nice to see us picking up some points?
No.
Neil, am I being a dick, or...?
No, it wasn't too little. Well, technically it was too little too late, but it shouldn't have been. It should have been spot on.
Obviously it's being churlish as usual, but there's part of me would have almost seen us... I can't really tell. We're going to end up finishing the season so close to it, aren't we?
No.
It's going to be absolutely disgusting. I think there's a fair chance we can go to Oldham and win, and I think we'll probably be the difference of, 4 or 5 points out the playoffs?
One win.
If you think of... Do you reckon one win? It could be, couldn't it,
I think you've got Wigan away, and the other they're not going to... No.
I think we'll lose against Oldham.
Do you reckon?
Well, I mean... I think our third away game of the season was Burton.
Was that the third away game, really?
Since then, the highest team in the division we've beaten currently sit, I think, 20th, which is Fleetwood.
Okay, that's interesting.
They've beaten Fleetwood, Colchester, Crewe and Blackpool away, which are 4 of the bottom 5.
Yeah.
And so even if we beat Oldham... who are 17th, the mighty 17th. And this is, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but this is one thing I felt quite interesting about the Tony Roby interview after the game, was when he was like, it was really our losses against Rochdale and Colchester at home which have cost us. And our home form is as good as our home form has been for a long time. And, 12 victories at home, I think, you look at it and we're in the top 6 to 9, 6th to 9th in the sort of home form table of all won 12 games and got like 42 points or something, or 32 points or whatever. That'd be 42. What's let us down this season is our away form. Our away form is 14th best in the division. And that's what stopped, our home form hasn't stopped us getting in the playoffs. 2 more away wins and we're in the playoffs.
But it's just, I don't understand this. It doesn't, why is it our away? Surely those points could have come from anywhere.
They could have done, but what I'm saying is our home form our home form's good enough. Our home form, our home form is a top 6 home form. Our away form is 14th.
You don't only get home points or away points. He's neither right nor wrong.
No.
If we are 3 points away from the playoffs, 4 points. I would have taken 4 points more at home to have got there.
Yeah, but I think winning 12 out of 23 home games is a really good performance. I don't think our home form, I think our home form is very, very good. Accepting it to be exceptional in this division, where I think Wigan have only won 14 of their home games.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
So I think 12 wins at home, I think, is something to be very commendable for. I just think,
but that's not
our away form has. If we were better away from home. Like, if we'd have won all of our home games, we'd have been in the playoffs. But life doesn't work like that. I think one of the questions, and it goes into all the questions about our away form, like, why is Adam Armstrong scored in only 2 away games? Why can we only beat the utter shit in League One away from home?
But I think this is very early for us to have got onto these questions, I feel. Should we try and do moments of the week and move through there? Paul, do you want to start us off?
I've got 2. One is, and again it goes back to Tony Murray's post-match interview, where he was talking about Adam Armstrong being only 18 and moving away from home, and he made it sound like it was something quite unusual. And I thought, most of my friends left home at 18 and moved hundreds of miles away to go to university. 18-year-old moving away from home isn't that unusual, moving away from their parents. It's not, it's not like Adam Armstrong's the only person who's done that. Yeah. Or is that just me being a miserable bastard?
I can't say anymore. Stop reading the post-match interviews, can I? For fear of sound like a stuck record.
It is what it is, isn't it? It's like he's an 18. We could have signed him as an 18-year-old. We loaned him as an 18-year-old. It's just he's moved away from home. I don't see it as being a necessary comment to make.
But if Andy Turner's got a microphone in his face, he just says, I just think he's on platitudes, isn't he? I don't think he wants to be there. I think he's just.
Did you hear King of Platitudes, Tud Guy, the week before? Oh, I've never heard an interview like it. He just go, we've let the fans down, He just went down through a list of everybody we've let down. It's like, shut up now, Tud Guy. We know you've annoyed us. Stop saying stuff.
Clinton Morrison school of trying to get fans on side without actually really doing anything or saying anything.
People read into it. They're like, "Oh, Tud Guy loves us. Yeah, we should give him another contract. He really cares." It's like, he's come onto the radio and just said a load of stuff. Well, you think, what can I say in this situation will make people like me? And that's what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, my other moment of the week was Joe Cole's pass for Andy Rose's goal, and as you know, I haven't been overly. I think the Joe Cole signing hasn't worked in total, but that pass is something that someone like Joe Cole isn't going to lose, and it was just fantastic.
Good stuff. Neil?
I'm going to take the abstract route this week. There's nothing specific. It's just the overwhelming frustration of how we're not involved on the final day. It kind of hit me as I was sat there on the match while everybody was kind of cheering and suddenly getting quite buoyant about the fact that the season was over and they were standing up for the Sky Blues, and I couldn't do it. I was livid. I was asked to sit next to you that day, and nobody wanted to talk to me because I was just so cross. Tell me about
just before we started recording, you said that you were shouting a particular word at the players as we.
Well, yeah. The more I support this club, the more I feel like I'm a little bit incompatible with pretty much everybody who supports it as well. So I sat there, and in my mind, we failed this season. So at that point when everybody was stand up for the Sky Blues, clapping, like giving them this real great send off, I was sat there thinking, well, we're ninth place, we should be in the playoffs. And I was just shouting out failure to pretty much the whole crowd. Everybody, I was sat down shouting this out, and people were giving me some strange looks, but I was in no mood to cheer on that team on Saturday, given how the table was shaping up and how that should have been two teams on 66 points playing out, to get to the final day. So, yeah, very cross still.
I don't blame you.
It's any consolation, Neil, I didn't celebrate our 2 goals against Millwall.
I didn't either. No.
You've finally scored 2 goals, both of them brilliant goals. Yeah. Against 10 men and Millwall, and I'm meant to be happy about this. It's just, you were shit for 20 minutes. The player headbutted Ruben Ramirez. You then had an hour to score 2 goals. Well done. You've finally done it. And it says very like John Fleck's goal is a fantastic strike. And I think Tud Guy's goal is probably quite underrated because he waited and waited and waited. And the goalkeeper did really well to stay up as long as he did. And Tud Guy took it at just the right time. I think if he'd have taken it any earlier, the keeper would have saved it. He couldn't take it any later, really. So I think that was a fantastic finish. But it was still a case of, well, this is all a bit too little, too late, isn't it?
So I agree with both of you. The 3 of us are miserable bastards. You do wonder at this point who's still listening to this podcast. I'm not saying that I completely agree with you, but as a separate point, this is because us talking about it must have become such a slog.
Yeah, I guess it is. But I maintain I would much rather be angry about this than be endlessly joyous about something that is, in my mind, failure.
And I don't think it
helps, does it?
I completely agree with you.
It's got to be hard work for listeners, obviously. we apologise.
It has been. We must be up to about 3-4 months now of just absolute hardcore depression on here. I will try and restore a small glimmer of hope or happiness in that I just think Ruben Ramirez scoring against Sheffield United, who gave him such awful treatment at Bramall Lane, made me very, very, very happy. We're going to go on to talk about some of the players and some of the performances, etc. this season later, including Ruben Ramirez, so I expect to come up a wee bit. First of all, we haven't done a pod since for a good few weeks now, and so we've got some games that we haven't talked about that we just wanted to spend a couple of minutes glossing over, basically. So we had, I think we've had Millwall, Bradford, Sheffield United and Doncaster away since we last recorded, Is that right?
Yep.
Thoughts, notable moments. I mean, the first thing I would say is that which came first? Is it the Millwall game came first, wasn't it? The Millwall game was the point where I decided that I just couldn't be asked anymore and stopped going, and then have found that we've won all 3 of those home games. We haven't. Yeah. I haven't done the tot up my my sort of home attendance win ratio and non-attendance win ratio, but I am starting to think it's probably worth doing to work out whether I should buy a season ticket on ethical grounds next season.
Do us all a favour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Neil, give us a rundown of the pertinent points.
Okay, the 2 home games that I kind of felt. Obviously, we won both of them, but I felt they were quite different in sort of nature. So I think we've already touched on the Millwall one, where they were the better team. It was sheer madness for that guy to lash out at Ramirez, and doing that kind of set the match up for us basically just having a go. And as Paul's already alluded to, we kept the ball a lot. We showed very little sort of creative moments, and it took something pretty special from John Fleck to get us back into the game. And eventually we dug out a result when I don't think really our sort of performance, even though it was against 10 men, when we controlled it, we still didn't really deserve that. I don't think we just controlled the match, but we didn't. We controlled it because I had 10 men, so it was frustration. It was sort of the overwhelming feeling, just because we've got 3 points on the board, but we still didn't look anywhere close to a team that was any good. So that was annoying. But I thought, in my mind, Bradford was a lot different. They were very good. They were so quick, and I knew from the first 10 minutes when there was just mistake after mistake, and they were pressing us intensely. I thought, if we're gonna win this, we're gonna have to earn it, and we did earn it. And again, I don't think we were fantastic, but we worked more in that game than we showed in any sort of the 2-3 months before that. We actually showed like we wanted to win that match. Like there was a reason for us wanting to win it, and even though the goal was somewhat fortuitous, and it was a great finish by Rose, but it kind of dropped perfectly for him, and it's not like we really created it. That was a really well earned win, and I thought, hang on, can we do this? Can we actually make ourselves? Are we still in the playoff run? And then obviously, I didn't go to Doncaster, but from all I can tell, from all I read, we were metaphorically and physically, we just didn't turn up in any sort of sense. Players didn't turn up, and Rudy Johnson didn't turn up, Chris Stokes didn't turn up, nobody turned up. It was what should have been, in hindsight, our biggest game. That would have set us up for a massive match against Sheffield United, and it just fell apart. And to do that, for a game not to matter, or seemingly not to matter to our players or anybody, when it could have actually meant so much, it's galling. I'm very angry.
But didn't you find... I didn't go, and when I saw the team, I found it really interesting that you went back to having Jones and Murphy. Now, I know we're going to go on to, obviously, discussing the players. I've been very impressed at times with Jacob Murphy this season. But the last time I saw him against Wigan, he didn't look like he actually wanted to be on the pitch. He just didn't look interested. And maybe he was, and we'll have all the players still care. He didn't look like the player I'd put into a must-win game. Because he wasn't energetic. He wasn't the Jacob Murphy we saw at the start of the season. And I know people have a discussion about Ruben Ramirez. He had played well in the 2 games that we'd won, the 2 games before. And to see him dropped and Murphy brought back in was just part of that. I don't understand some of the decisions Mowbray makes.
It's the idea of Jacob Murphy, isn't it? It's the idea of, hang on, we could have Jacob Murphy on the left, Jones on the right, this mad pace. But like you say, I mean, if you're basing this on recent performance levels, that's not a decision you make. He's making it because he thinks, he might be able to pull something out of the bag. Maybe Jacob Murphy will be on it this match. Maybe he showed something in training, and that's why he brought him in. But the reality is, Jacob Murphy's mind isn't what it... This makes him sound like Stephen Hawking or something, but isn't what it once was. It was, he was well up for it earlier in the season. He was really confident. Now it's just, I think he started to feel the pressure and the fact that the fans were turning on him, and that doesn't help.
Do you think I think he's looked physically burnt out for about 3 months.
It's all, isn't it? It's physical. I think it's mental as well. I mean, he's a young lad, and when people start booing you for missing a penalty, you know you've got there are problems there.
Yeah, and I think that I'm biased, so I should be careful. But I really like Jacob Murphy. I think he was really, really, really
me too.
good at the start of the season. But I think that there was a period where I thought he's knackered. It's probably worth him having a bit of a rest and then coming back. And then he did come back, and you're just like, you're just knackered. You really could just be going back to Norwich and just cutting our losses. As much as I rate him, I kind of felt like you've played enough as you're going to play this season, aren't you? You clearly have never played football ever before. He
did suffer, didn't he? He suffered from sort of the mental lethargy that the whole team was showing during that sort of February, March period where we needed some life, and we were kept hoping he was going to be the one. And when you look back at it, you think, if there's one guy who wasn't going to be able to be a spark, it was Jacob Murphy during that period, because I feel like he went to some pretty dark places where he was just like playing, and he just didn't seem up to it at all.
What else from the games that we've missed?
Obviously the movement of Vincelot to a range of positions. None of them were actually his main position. Do we move on to Sheffield United? Because that was I couldn't pick that formation most of the match. It was like some weird parallelogram kind of slanted shape, and I'm guessing, Paul, was it left wing back for Stephen Hunt, would you say?
No, it was. There's been very few occasions, and I know we like to pretend that he doesn't, and he plays different formations. Mowbray's played 4-2-3-1 in virtually every game this season, and on Saturday he played 4-2-3-1. It was he played
with one fullback going up and the other not.
Yeah, he had Vince Lowe at right back with the two centre halves and Stephen Hunt at left back, with Joe Cole and John Fleck in centre midfield, with Rose wide right, Armour wide left, and George Thomas behind Fortuné.
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't get too hung up on a formation, which really doesn't mean much, does it? But it was, again, just a hard-to-call formation of players that sort of smattered around into different positions. I think it was quite a good performance, really. I think scoring early obviously helped us, always does. It was a lucky goal, but it set them on their way. I think some players played okay. I think John Fleck and Cole in the middle had a good game together, actually. I mean, Cole has started to show in the last few games, at least, that maybe a deeper role does suit him more. And actually, going back to the early part of the season, most of his good performances came when he dropped back a little bit. So against Crewe away, particularly, he took it upon himself almost to drop deep, and he was able to sort of control the match a bit more. I thought the two in defence were good. It was a nice partnership between Stevens and Martin, who both played reasonably well. Martin's looked solid since he's come back into the team, really. And Stevens, I really like his striding out. I think that was quite exciting. I was a little bit... He's young, but I'm still struggling to see a George Thomas that is ready to make an impact on the first team. Personally, I think he's got a little bit to do in terms of... He doesn't seem sort of at the right sort of level to make a proper impact. He has nice little touches every now and again, but I think he's got a bit more work to do in the summer. But that's just me being kind of judgmental on the players, when really I didn't care for that match. I was in the mood all the way through. It was just... I got worse and worse as the match went on, just because it was just looking at the table and just seeing what was sort of unfolding around us and how this should have been so much different. And listening after the match, and a lot of people were saying, the season was over weeks ago, and it wasn't over weeks ago. It really wasn't. I mean, the only ones that we had to do a miracle, so we could control our own sort of fate, and that was we had to win all our games. And as it turns out, that we could only just miss out on winning one of them, and that. But the idea that every other team around us was going to win all their games as well to stop us from achieving it was madness. If we win all our games, then no one else is going to do that. Except maybe Scunthorpe have gone close, but it was so close. I think 71's going to do it, isn't it? And that if we'd beaten Doncaster, we would have had a massive chance of final game. And I'm going to start whinging about it now, but I just think it's such a wasted opportunity.
No,
I still can't.
I'm completely with you. But I am, and we're going to go on to this. I think this is probably a good time to seg on to this. But this is where I just lost it, and this is why I've not gone for the last few weeks. Is I don't understand why did it feel like the season had ended 4 or 5 weeks ago? When you look at it now, and you're like, you can't end the season there. You can't be talking about it and thinking about it like there's nothing to play for. When it's such a mad shit league where just a few wins might make a difference.
It's typical us, isn't it, though? It's kind of it's typical Coventry behaviour where we're always preparing for failure before it's necessary. Like, the amount of years we've got to January and there's games in hand and stuff against us. And we're not going to make it now. Look at the games in hand against us. It's like, there's 20 games left.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if someone's got 2 games in hand on you. So much can happen. But we're always there. And like when we were playing poorly, people saying, "Oh, the team's gone," but we've already shown that we've won. Was it 3 out of 4?
Yeah.
Even when you're rubbish, you can still win games, and it's so frustrating to see that.
You can still beat a Sheffield United team, even if you put that team out on Saturday. A team that didn't make any sense, and that nobody could put it together before the start of the game.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Anyway, Paul, you're going to lead
also
us.
Go on. The 3 games, the 3 games all have slight mitigating circumstances which make them slightly interesting. The Millwall were leading and destroying us until the player inexplicably headbutted Ruben Ramirez, which when you watched in real life you were like, is he just what? And then the Bradford game would have been very interesting if the guy hadn't got sent off. And again, they had a throw-in in our third, and their player just kicked Jack Stevens in the back of the legs. And that was just bizarre. The Sheffield United game, we were 2-0 up within 8 minutes. And the first one was a very speculative shot from Armour from about 35 yards that happened to hit Fortune's arse, wrong foot the keeper and end up in the back of the net. And the second, as I said, was a great pass by Joe Cole. And we were 2-0 up. And Sheffield United didn't quite seem to know what to do, because they must have been a bit like the rest of us and gone, how the fuck are this team 2-0 up? And then they've gone, well, they've had 2 shots and they've both gone in. And then Sheffield United dominated the next 40 minutes without really, I agree completely with Neil. I thought Aaron Martin has been exceptional for a couple of months now, and Jack Stevens, while he's running out of defence every so often, fills me with dread. I like the fact he's a confident player. But when Sheffield United got the penalty, it was like, there's how many minutes? 20 minutes left? And we got the third because, and all credit to Sheffield United, to be fair, they had to win that game. So they left themselves open at the back. We brought Ramirez on, who utilised the space available alongside Jones and Phillips, who came on at right back, and we suddenly had a bit more dynamism from the fullback role, and he got forward, and it was a lovely little flick from Jones's pass to release Ramirez into the,
Very nice flick, actually, yeah. I see on Instagram, Jody Jones was trying to steal the assist. Not even that. That was all Aaron Phillips.
But, so it's one of those, if you want to sit here with your Scrooge McDuck hat on, you can go, wow, we only won those 3 goals due to those circumstances. The reality is, the Millwall one, the Millwall one is, anything could have happened. But as you correctly say, it's like, the reason everyone wrote the season off is because 4 games ago, we looked like a shit football club and a shit football team, and you couldn't see where the goals are going to come from. 4 games later, we scored 6 goals, and we've won 3 out of 4 games. 3 against teams who are all above us in the table.
Go on.
I think you couldn't. If that guy hadn't got sent off against Millwall, if I was Tony Mowbray, I'd send him a beer, because if we hadn't won that, I doubt we'd have beaten Bradford.
Yeah, I don't think no one's saying that, are they?
No, I'm not saying you are. What I'm saying is, I think it's the last couple of games basically put a very nice icing on the cake. They make the home form look really good.
It doesn't make.
They've given the fans 3 victories to look, to end the season on a high. We can go home and go, we won our last 3 home games. We played pretty good football during all 3, especially in periods.
It's not made a blind bit. It's not made a blind bit of difference to the way that I look at the season.
Well, no,
There's only one positive, actually. The only one thing about a strong finish actually might remove the whole improvement argument next year. Now there's no grace there. If we can at least get this win on Saturday and finish
Strong,
9th or 8th, whatever it can be, at least next year there's none of this, unless people are looking at 7th, and then we're going to throttle them. But unless, at least now we're looking at next year and there's only one aim. And I'm not going to get angry with people who are not asking, not expecting anything else, because there's the only other improvement on this year now should be playoffs. So that's all I can take from it. But it should have been this season, because this team, I don't think we're not going to get this team again. This team technically should be good enough to go up.
Right, come on. Let's get on let's go on to next season then. To the review of this season then.
Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do part 1, because we're going to continue with part 2 next week after the Oldham game. So, Paul, kick us off. Where are we starting?
All right, well, let's start with the players. And I asked quite a few questions on Twitter earlier regarding who was our best player, who was the best signing, loan, most improved, young player, and then worst signing, worst loan, didn't really live up to expectations, most pointless signing, and most hard done by. And sort of quite varied views on quite a lot of these things, and we'll sort of touch on them as we go through them. But all right, quiz question for you both. Assuming no one makes his debut on Saturday, how many players have you used this season?
35?
In the league, we've used 34.
Oh, Neil.
And we've used 36 in total.
Split that out of nowhere. Oh.
Sambu came on and Latif came on in...
The FA Cup, yeah.
Oh, sorry, 37, because Ivor Lawton's also made a sub-appearance somewhere along the line.
When you were talking about the varied sort of appearance of players on these lists, presumably Latif comes up high on the best of the season, best loan, best signing.
Latif has been mentioned honourably by a couple of people.
Yeah.
But very few people have actually...
He is a bit of a highlight. This is how poor this season has been, is that he has become a bit of a highlight, because I can't remember seeing a player look so consistently bewildered in a Cov shirt. Played a grand total of about 20 minutes in a cup game, but just loads of pictures of him on the training ground or in under 21 games with a look on his face. It's just like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that was it. You did the him standing next to Joe Cole kind of photo.
Yeah,
the face he had then was just sensational.
I like him. I miss him.
I think
it's not a coincidence that our form was tailed off dramatically since we left.
Yes.
Think about that. Yeah, go on then, Paul. So carry on then. So,
all right, well, because we're starting at the lower ends of the level, obviously we're going to cover the worst aspects of the season first, and it would appear that the worst signing seems to be agreed pretty unanimously with good old Peter Ramage.
Peter Ramage.
I think we can all agree was shit.
Yeah.
Yes. Who came in at a time when defence was looking all right, and 3 games later, 3 defeats later, I think he's now gone on to destroy Leyton Orient's hopes of playoff.
Yeah, they've completely capitulated. Although I think that could be a mixture of their owner being a nutcase, and I think they've had 3 managers this season. But yeah, I'm definitely exclusively blaming Peter Rampage.
Or as he's now known, Peter the Impact.
Well, like this,
can I add my 2 pence? Go on.
I haven't seen Vladimir Gadchev in his 1 sub-appearance, but I put him above Peter Ramage in my list of players of the year. Above him was Stephen Hunt, who I think we all agree had an all right game on Saturday.
Can I quickly, sorry, just before we move off Peter Ramage, do you remember when we had him in on trial or whatever, and Mowbray was saying... I've got him in, I'm having a look at him. I like the look of him, but he's like Sam Ricketts, where he's not the big centre-half that I want. And he's like a talker and whatever. Signed him anyway. And ended up being a lot more like Sam Ricketts than we really understood at the time. What was that all about? What's it? He was just like, yeah, I've had a look at him. He's not the sort of player I want. Going to sign him, though.
Put him in.
Yeah,
give him a
I'll
go.
whack him straight in. He's not. How many games did he play? Was it 3?
3 and came on to sub in 1.
He was dog popped, weren't he? I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to move off. I don't want to let him get off that lightly, if I'm honest. But
Okay, well, yeah, I don't think when we can have a Legends Day in the future, Ramage will return, unless it's the Paul Trelope return. As I said,
Stephen
Vladimir
Hunt
Gad made 1 sub appearance.
Mm-hmm.
4. Above him, we've got Stephen Hunt with his, as I said, he played all right on Saturday, at left back.
He was on my list, actually, and I was mulling this one over.
I don't think I'll ever be able to shake that performance against Barnsley at Oakwell earlier in the season out of my head for Stephen Hunt.
A lot of people are having him as the most pointless signing.
Yep.
Gotta be honest, a lot of people
How are we
don't-
doing this? Are you giving us the crowd source of views and then we chuck in our own, or what's
Yeah,
going
so
on?
what I thought I'd do is I'd get to a point where we've sort of utilised all the crowd input, then you can give me a decision.
Oh, okay. I'll keep
Okay, cool.
then.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Then there's Martin Lorenzen, who made 5 starts and 2 sub appearances, who's also up there for most useless or pointless signing. I didn't realise he was 31.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand.
Did you assume that he was 34?
Yeah, well, yeah, I suppose there is. He does have that on his side. Above that, Connor Thomas made 3 sub appearances, if anyone can remember that he still exists.
Poor old Connor Thomas.
What's this?
Are we letting you go through, or are we going to talk briefly about Connor Thomas today?
I've got 4 more, then we can go back to
Alright.
Connor Thomas. There was
What category is that, though?
Connor Thomas, I think, he's almost on a sort of forgotten list.
Yeah, hang on a
This
second.
is created its own category.
I think he has. I think it's basically him and Lee Burge are on their own category now of so what next?
But what is it that you're reading out? Are you reading out a list of players that have played only a few games?
Well, yeah, I'm going for the players who basically made minimal impact plus 1 other. So
I don't know what category this is. I'm very confused.
Yeah, I'm really confused now. You didn't
give
send
us a
us the...
second.
Yeah.
there's Bryn Morris, who you might have also forgotten.
Yeah, but what category is this?
I'll tell you in a second.
When you've worked it out, when you've invented one.
No, when I've got to the final one, okay?
Oh, this must be worth it. Go on then. Go on.
It's not going to be worth it. You've ruined it now. Let's drop off in a second. There's George Thomas. Then there's Fortuné, who made 14 starts. Bailey Cargill and Sam Ricketts. And then I've got Gal Bigurimara. So that's basically 11 players. Yeah? Now, those 11 players are mainly the players who were up for worst signing, worst loan, and most pointless signing.
Connor Thomas? George Thomas?
How's he in there?
Well, they're just the players who would just happen to be in with that list of.
What about your didn't live up to expectations? Is that what we're thinking? Is it that category for Connor Thomas?
Didn't live up to expectations. Is sort of there's people like Joe Cole and Jacob Murphy in that particular list. My favourite one is someone put didn't live up to expectations the month of January, February, and April, which I thought was quite good.
Accurate,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
thinking about throwing your list in that does not meet up with expectations.
Yeah. So who are they having as their worst signing?
Oh, we're back to structure now, are we? Oh, here we
We're
go.
back to structure.
Well,
Okay.
Go on, Neil, you start.
For most of these, it was kind of one or the other. It was nothing sort of definitive in the whole thing. But for worst signing, I've got Peter Ramage / Fortuné. I just think that in their own special ways, they've been terrible.
Yeah, fortunately. Paul, what are you saying?
Worst signing. I think Stephen Hunt. The thing is, the Ramage one, while he was shit, and while I don't really agree with him being put in the team when he was, I understand we're down to sort of we've got 4 defenders in the squad, and all 4 of them are on the pitch. So I sort of understand the point behind that one. The Stephen Hunt one, I still can't quite. Even the sort of Darius Henderson, I sort of see what he was trying to do with I'm going to get a tall striker in who's good in the air. The fact he's been injured and chronic. But maybe we should have known that by the fact that he came from Scunthorpe, who released him. Like, maybe the clues were there. But the Stephen Hunt one, just getting him off the... the other thing with the Stephen Hunt one is the ramifications it had on, I believe, him coming into the team must have tipped Jim O'Brien over the edge. So it's the whole package with Stephen Hunt.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think, like you say, Ramage gets off with the fact that we needed a defender at that point, and really, you think, well, we could have probably taken anybody. I think he wasn't the defender that we needed, obviously. I don't think he's the defender anyone needs. But the Stephen Hunt thing is just, like you say, is just dumbfounding. At a time where we'd lost Ryan Kent and we were crying out for some pace or some solidity in defence, Stephen Hunt, I will never understand that.
The worst loans tends to be Morris or Biggie, with one person going for Cargill. I
think Bryn Morris is getting a bit of a raw deal there.
I think he was just here at the wrong... He was here when Fleck and Winslow were at their best and he didn't really get an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm not too sure what the point of getting him in was, but I guess he offered cover at a time where it wasn't needed, and maybe if one of them had got injured, then fair play. But he didn't look like a bad player to me.
I think you guys saw him in more time. He played away in one match, didn't he?
We saw him at Rochdale. And he was...
Yeah.
He was banging on ice for the first 20...
Oh, well, that's ruined your point, hasn't it?
Well, he was awful for the first 20, 30 minutes, weren't he? And then they moved him up a bit and he grew into the game quite a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he was on my list purely because every time I didn't see him make one good touch, which is quite bad. But I think I saw him play three appearances and he didn't do anything that even made me think he was a reasonable footballer. Which is, like I say, it's not fair on him because it was only sub-appearances and he came on in matches where, I think most of them were kind of over by that point. But, yeah, it's a shame for him, but as far as loan quality goes, I'd say he was there for me.
And the most pointless signing?
Oh, Hunt, I've gone for. But who?
So I sort of agree with the people who've gone for Lorentzen, just because... While I agree, it's a bit odd. I think Hunt was the worst signing. I just think the Lorentzen one is... You've gone back to playing Aaron Phillips, who you clearly don't rate, above this guy who you just threw into the team. Just the whole... Even if he'd been really good, he was still 31, 32 next season. It just seems like an odd signing, really.
When I spoke to Chris Anderson, he said, he was there for... Was it... He was supposed to be backup for... Was it Willis?
Yeah.
They said there was certainly a purpose for him coming in. It wasn't like we just brought him in for the sake of it. I think because obviously someone was injured in defence as well, so they were having to move Ricketts back into the middle as well. So there was meaning behind it. But like you say, when Aaron Phillips was doing a good job, and you've obviously still got Ricketts there as well, it baffled a lot of people. And then he got injured straight away, which didn't help.
I think I have a feeling he's had problems with injuries throughout his career. But there can be little doubt that he has good pedigree. He's got Sweden caps, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And 31 is not a bad age for somebody coming into this club. But given the problems that we've got of either they're having kids or granddads, 31s. But ideally, you're looking for we'd spent a lot of the season saying that you want players in sort of 27 to 29, but 31's not a bad age. That's experience in a young defence. I just think that they made what is, I guess, a poor decision, but one that I can almost understand making. I just think he wasn't physically ready for England, was he?
Didn't seem it.
No, he had that one game where he came off with... Didn't he come off for some mad reason? Didn't he come off with,
head injury against Port Vale?
No, it was... No, it was a game... I don't think I was at that game.
Peanut cramps.
It was something like... Yeah. Do you remember, I remember Mowbray saying after the game that he came off, and that really, when he came off, he was like, oh, actually, I'm not that bad anyway.
Oh, God, yeah. Bloody hell. It was like Rochdale at home.
Yeah, it was something like that, yeah. I just don't think he's physically up to it. I haven't seen much of him, to be honest, but I get the impression that there's a chance that he could spend the summer getting physically up to it, and he might be a choice at right back, especially if Aaron Phillips is going, which is what all indications look like.
Well, I think if you let Aaron Phillips go, you're letting him go because you really believe one of the Kelly Evans twins is going to be your backup next season. I just don't see the point of letting Phillips go keep out of the two of them. I don't see why Phillips would be the one you let go when he's 22.
I think it's crazy, but there you go.
Then, 5 players I think just very quickly worth mulling over, which are Lee Burge, Big E, George Thomas, Connor Thomas, and Ryan Haynes. Again, at the start of the season, we were talking about, I know Big E's come back on loan, but we were talking about some of these players really breaking through this season. Ryan Haynes has made less than 10 appearances. Connor Thomas hasn't started a league game. I know George Thomas, I suppose, is the youngest of those 5, so he's probably got the least expectation. Lee Burge has lost out and really is second choice, isn't he, at the moment? I mean,
without doing anything wrong, really.
Yeah, I feel a bit sorry for Lee Burge, but he's not Reece Charles Cook, who's really burst through recently, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Reece Charles Cook showed how good he was the last 3 home games, where he caught virtually every cross that he could come for, he claimed, and he really is showing a lot more confidence and experience in taking the pressure out of those sort of situations.
I know it's lies and statistics, but if you look through his in-game statistics, Sideways Sammy did a really good job of compiling some it's sort of in-game stats. Neil, go on.
No, sorry, I'm watching the Chelsea game.
All right. Oh, it's just gone 2-2.
Yeah.
He did a really good job of compiling some stats that talked about in-game performance, things like, and I don't think it was, percentage of crosses collected. It was that sort of thing that ranked him, especially in the latter half of the season, as one of the top keepers in the league. There's some really, really impressive stats on there. I think what's interesting with him is that I think we've had a succession of goalkeepers who have made miraculous, spectacular grandstand saves that have made them sort of look like the keeper they are. I think what's typified him is just that recently he's just looked so assured. I haven't seen him make many excellent saves, but I don't think there was a lot that he's done wrong at all. Does that make sense? I'm not blasting him saying that
the stuff that we've not usually had a keeper do well. He's done that stuff well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's neat and he's clever and whatever.
I think he scares people a little. People are still not used to having a keeper who's so keen to have the ball at his feet. But you can sort of see the gasps around him. But it's actually quite nice having someone who wants to play out from defence and he's kind of sitting in that sweeper role.
And I think again, my sort of weekly mea culpa about the fact that I were completely happy to backtrack on sort of mid-season calls for an experienced keeper. I think actually I'm really delighted to say has gone on to prove me wrong, massively wrong. Sorry, Paul, carry on.
That's fine. Connor Thomas, is it worth persevering with, or is
he's done?
Gone?
I think, I think that's the end of the road, isn't it?
Haynes?
I don't. Yeah, sorry, Neil, go on.
No, I'd stick with him. The problem we've got is obviously Mowbray will have seen these players enough and will have his own interpretation of it. So if Mowbray doesn't feel like Haynes has kind of got the body to be the footballer he wants him to be, then it's, whatever we say doesn't make any difference. But I've always liked him. I think he grew a lot last year as a sort of a player, as someone who he played really well in the first half of the year, and he was kind of rashly pulled out of the team, I thought. So I think he's got more to offer. I think he's definitely worth sticking with.
I thought there was a period of the season when Stokes had to fill in at centre back and Ryan Haynes was at left back. That was one of the most defensively solid we looked all season. And then whoever it was got back fit again. And I get the fact that you would revert back to type, but then it seems like he's been completely cast out.
We have such a lovely shape when we have Phillips at right back and Haynes at left back. it just feels right with those two because there's no imbalance there. Both of them get forward in a good manner. I mean, that's not to say their final product's particularly brilliant, but they still move forward as kind of a unit, and they stick together as a defensive unit as well. And I just think it's a shame for both of them, really.
Well, that's it. If you're going to play the 4-2-3-1 and your two centre midfielders don't really get forward, you need your fullbacks to provide you width and dynamism from deep, which is why the insistence to play Sam Ricketts has just befuddled me all season. But then when Stokes got injured and was clearly going to miss the rest of the season, why he didn't call back Ryan Haynes, I think will forever be a mystery. And there's quite a few people have said that Haynes was probably one of the most hard done to people this season, just for that decision alone.
But you've inadvertently hit the nail on the head there, is tactically, I agree with you. If I was playing a 4-2-3-1 and I was managing that team, I would be looking for the fullbacks to provide dynamism and width and everything else that you said. But patently, that's not how Mowbray wants them to behave, is it? Because that's not how they behave. And I should imagine that's at the root of him not trusting or wanting Haynes and Phillips. The way that he sets that team up is that the front four have to do the attacking and the back six do the defending. There's very little. He's talked over and over about Fleck and Vincelow not joining up with the attackers so much. He wants them to be sort of pivots, doesn't he? And I think that's the same with the fullbacks. So you don't see them getting up there all that often, do you? But I just think that that's a massive mistake when you've got misfiring attackers to the extent that we had this season, or at the tail end of this season anyway.
And then the final one is Biggie. Is the worst. I think there's a player. I really think if someone's got the time and the patience and is prepared to probably play him the first 20 games next season, 10 of which he might be somewhere between garbage and poor, and the other 10 he'll be somewhere between average and brilliant. I think there is definitely a player there. I don't think he's going to get that time at Cov. I think the Cov fans have got way too much expectation on him, which he hasn't achieved since he's returned. I'm not denying that, but also don't think he's been as bad as others have made him out to be.
His issue is more around, I think it's a mental one. I think we all look at the technique and everything. He's got such phenomenal vision and abilities, just to craft something out of nothing when it comes to having the ball at his feet. But I just think there's a high-risk player there because at points he will just do things which are inexplicable. And the problem is, although all players do this, his seems to be more sort of constant. There's a regularity about him making mistakes, which is a little bit hard to sort of stomach. You don't someone in his position can't make the daft mistakes that he does as often as he does, I'd say. If you can curb them, then obviously you've got a good player there.
I think he's a rescue dog in the sense that I think he spent the last 4 years just being kicked around. And I think that it's a case of whether you're going to get his mentality back again, or has he just been broken? I don't think he's a technically poor footballer at all, quite the opposite. But I just think his problem this season, when I've seen him, has been his decision making. And I think and I don't know whether I feel like somebody needs to fully rehabilitate him, and I don't think that's going to happen here, because I think to do that he would need to drop into a team who would say to him, "You are the absolute outright main man," and we're not going to do that, are we? Not when you've got Vladimir Gadjev bringing up the rear.
You don't beat the Gadge.
I am so excited about him. I really, really am. And part of it is because I know he's going to let me down. I think that's part of the anticipation and the excitement about it. I almost want to build him up to unattainable levels so that I can be really disappointed by him, because apparently that's what I like doing. I can't wait to see him. Yeah, sorry, anyway. Where were we at there then? So, Big Romana, was there anyone left on that list, Paul?
I think we've gone through that list of five.
What category is it again? Sorry?
This is just 5 players.
Just
some
5
of these
players.
categories are just go with the flow, man.
So, some of the complaints will be false.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The next 10 players I'm about to list basically fall into a very middling category, and we'll discuss them once I've gone through the next 10, okay?
I don't like this. Go on.
Shut up. All right.
I'm just trying to wind you up.
Yeah, I know. There's Jody Jones, I started right. There's Ben Turner, Jordan Willis, Andy Rose, Ryan Kent, Joe Cole, Marcus Tudguy, Jack Stevens, James Madison, and Aaron Phillips. I sort of listed between my 20th and 11th best players of the season, which is quite an odd collection of players when you think that Joe Cole's in there, who made 18 starts in the end. Ryan Kent, who a lot of people are talking about being missing, and a couple of people had the best loan player. Marcus Tudguy, he's up there with a lot of people said that he's been harshly treated. When you think that he started 6 games and Fortune started 14, which is just baffling. If anyone can explain that one, I'd love to hear. If anyone out of that sort of, and I suppose the other one is Aaron Phillips. I can't see why he's not our first choice right back going into next season.
Yeah, he's my most hard done by. I've said it a few times. I just think he was part of a very successful unit, and we basically cut our nose off to spite our playoff bid just by getting him out of the team, just to punish him, which was just wrong, I thought. Good player.
All right. So I've gone through a bit of a long list, and yeah. All right, Ryan Kent. Do we think him going back to Liverpool was a major changing point? Because some people had him as our best loan player, and I know at the time we didn't really think he would have that much of an impact with his final touch. Have we missed him, or have we just not utilised the other players we could have done better?
Neil?
Yeah, I think we missed him. I think we missed the dynamic that sort of front three gave us. And I think the most frustrating part of all that is he's gone back to Liverpool for what seems like absolutely no reason. There's no point to him being there when he was with us, doing well. And I had him on my kind of initial list of best loan. I just think that depending on how you're sort of looking at it, and he feels sort of more like a loan than the season-long loans, just because they almost felt like our players. But he was very much a portion of time, came in, had a real impact on us, even though we keep going on about the final ball. But as far as his impact on the team and making us a threat, he was really, really good player, and it's a shame that he went back.
Where do you think he'll end up? Do you think he'll make it in Liverpool's first team, or?
Well, it's hard with that, but probably not. Just because when you look at the size of their youth setup as well, the chances of standing out and moving your way forward into the first team is very, very slim. I don't think he will end up at Liverpool. I don't think he's quite sort of the standout quality that they should be looking for. But I still think he's got enough sort of outstanding attributes when it comes to pace and things, which will set you apart in football. And I think maybe he could find another Premier League team, I'm sure, if he just, obviously continues to, get better.
I talked ad infinitum about him. I thought he was a really curious player. I think football is a team game, and there was absolutely no doubt that him being on the pitch made a massive difference to the team. We were just a much, much better team with him in it. I'm not convinced he's that good a player individually, but that there is absolutely no doubting that dynamically there is the pace on both sides and the difficulty with which teams found, that isn't a sentence, but you know what I mean. I think the trouble teams had trying to deal with two players as fast and direct as Murphy and Kent, it just was unstart. It was just too difficult for anybody to deal with. I think the big problem was that it was about not recognising that. In terms of where he'll go, I've got it here that he made a grand total of 17 appearances, 7 off the bench, 10 starts. I just think he's too young, and we haven't seen enough of him to make a decision on how far he'll go. Is it Shea Ojo, who was at Wolves and then has been playing at Liverpool recently? Ryan Kent could run the gamut between it being in League Two in a year's time or in 2 years' time to getting a decent Championship loan next season and making it. I think you said something really smart earlier in the season when you were talking about him. The best thing that could happen to him is that a decent Championship club could loan him for 2 years next season and give him continuity of playing games and let him have a run somewhere. And that would probably give you a much better a much better shot of whether he'd be good enough, developing him properly. You just know that won't happen though, don't you?
Well, I suppose the other thing is he started 10 games and only scored 1 goal, which when you think that Andy Rose has managed to get 2, is quite. You need better than that from, especially as you said earlier. We played with 4 attacking players. His main role was to score or create, and he didn't seem to have that end product, which is, I agree that we were probably a better team. We're definitely a better squad, matchday squad when he was around. I just think on an individual basis, if he's going to really kick on, he needs to add. He can't just be an all right player in a good team. I think he has to be contributing a lot more than he was.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Who's next?
And then, Joe Cole. I don't want to go over Joe Cole. Joe Cole, success or failure? Joey?
Failure. Sorry.
Neil?
Overall failure, but he's actually starting to come into his own a little bit more. I think it just took him too long to get into his stride when we needed him, and it's kind of now we know he's off. It's kind of done for with him. So yeah, failure, unfortunately. But still, my best moment really. Him getting someone was brilliant.
That's what I wanted to ask. We've spent a lot of time navel gazing over the last few weeks about what is football fandom and whatever else. And ultimately, and this is such a cod thing, ultimately whilst his performances didn't measure up, it was brilliant that day, weren't it? The whole feeling of it felt like the trajectory was going the right way. It felt like that was a player who would potentially continue on to be a coach at the club and bring experience and like a positive energy. It's Joe Cole, and he seemed like a great
You don't take
guy
that away from us, do you? That's happened now. Joe Cole playing for Cardiff has happened, and it's not like one of those rubbish old, we've just signed Tim Sherwood, isn't this good? This is a pure, iconic figure, like Paul himself said. He'd idolised this guy. He was one of his favourite players, and to have him actually play for Cov at a point where you still felt like he was still relevant, it was just it was phenomenal day. And I wish I'd met him. That would have been nice.
And I wish him all the best.
I'd like to make an honourable. I think Jack Stevens has done really well, and I hope someone in the Championship picks him up for loan next season. I think he's a guy who deserves more game time than he's getting at Southampton.
Do you think he's good enough to play in the Championship?
I think as long as he starts making... I think it's, as you said about Biggie, I think it's games. I think under 21s games don't matter. The results don't really matter. So he can afford to be a bit more laissez-faire. I think a good season in the Championship would really knock him into a player. I think there is definitely a player there. Whether or not... I don't think... He's not going to break into the Southampton team.
No.
He just needs games. And I think, I think he's stood out recently at times at our level. I think I'm not going to say he's too good for League One. I think he deserves a Championship role. And if he's not good enough, then so be it. But I think he's proven that he could play League One standard. And you'd like to think that he's got higher aspirations than that.
I think the thing for me with him is I think he is capable of playing in the Championship, but I think it would be much better for him to stay in League One and aim to be at a club that was at the very top of League One. Because the nature of the way that he plays, what you want to encourage, I think as a straight-up defender, is pretty talented. What marks him out as being different is if he can curb the decision, if he can improve the decision-making and cultivate the skills of him coming out and spraying the ball in the way that he does and improve on them, he will be an excellent, excellent defender. And I just don't see that if he goes to a sort of middling bottom Championship club, he'll have less scope for doing that. I think it's a little bit like John Fleck, where you'd think if he goes to a Championship club that aren't very good next season, he's just going to look like dog shit. I think that Stevens would be better served going to the equivalent of Wigan next season and then really sort of looking to step up to possibly Premier League or possibly sort of higher end Championship the season after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fine. I say he's definitely not. I only really saw Cargill a couple of times. Cargill never sat right with me. I just didn't take to him, but I've really taken to Stevens.
He's good, isn't he?
Yeah.
Is it a little bit like when we had Aaron Martin on loan?
Sorry again?
Is it a little bit like when we had Aaron Martin on loan the first time?
Yeah.
I didn't like him then.
Did you not?
No, he was a bit of a nuisance in my mind. But that's going to go down a whole different storyline, so we'll keep that one.
Yeah. And then James Maddison, I think it's really difficult to analyse James Maddison. So I don't really want to. Again, another player I don't think it's worth discussing at length because he started the season on fire. He got that injury. He came back when the team was starting to stutter a bit. I think there's been unfair expectation on him being the player to drive us to promotion. Obviously, the sale, whether or not it has affected his performances, whether or not you believe it's affected his performances, we will never know. The last couple, I don't think he's been helped by the fact he's been moved from pillar to post within the system. I think he's a number 10, that central role. And I know we talk about him being sort of the role being fluid, but I think that's where he should be starting. That's where, when you're in a defensive system, he's better without having that responsibility of tracking back in wide areas. I think he's a very gifted footballer, but I don't think he's had the season we hoped he would. But whether or not you put that down to the injury or put that down to the sale to Norwich, I think he's unanswerable, to be honest.
I think I can answer it.
Yeah, go on.
Go on then.
But I can't answer it, but I've got a theory just around James Maddison as a player, and he's not dissimilar to a lot of players of that sort of ilk. And I think James Maddison kind of needs to be the hero, and not in the sense where he's sort of selfish, but when Rooney came to the sort of prominence, he was almost better than he was at the time, just because people believe they're better, and they set them up on a pedestal, and they allow them to do things which maybe they wouldn't have the confidence or belief to do if they weren't sort of the hero. So he came into our team, and I just feel like he's in a very critical part of his career now, just because of he was the player he was because he was a hero and he was a Coventry lad, and we gave him a lot of grace when he did give the ball away because he's James Maddison, and we could see the talent he's got. We don't give him that anymore because he was sold. He gets more grief now than he ever did before. I mean, I think a lot of Cov fans don't like him, just generally don't like him now, and don't sort of recognise the talent he's got because he's moved on. Moving to Norwich is going to be so different for him because he's not the hero, he's not the local lad. He's small, which means that they've already said they need to do a lot of work with him, and I just think him being sold. And it's taken us off the ball because he's now worried maybe more about what people are saying about him, and he's a little bit more sort of inhibited in his play. And I think it was too soon, and I've just realised I've not answered your question, but that's kind of my thinking on James Maddison. I think he needed to be here a little bit longer for him to develop as a footballer. He's going to find it very tough at Norwich.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would also say that the thing I would just expand on of your comments there, that I think he needed to be the main man. I think that him and at the start, I don't know, we'll probably come on to this Millwall game. I know I've gone on and on and on about it, and it's an unfair comparison because it's one game and blah 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 blah. Ruben Lemiras, James Maddison, Jim O'Brien, that worked dynamically. It was great, wasn't it? In the same way that Ryan Kent worked when he came in and replaced. He worked when he was here. Those three worked, and it worked partly because whilst Ruben Lemiras probably identifies as a number 10, he was happy to sit on the left, and Maddison was the main man. There is absolutely no doubt about the fact that he was the star of that show, and I think that Joe Cole coming in probably jeopardised that to some extent. He never got then to move into... Joe Cole never actually played number 10, did he? Or maybe once or twice, but then sort of occupied a lot of the positions that Maddison would have wanted. It just didn't... We had a period, didn't we, where we had a lot of people vying for number 10.
Yeah.
Jacob Murphy's best performances arguably came in that position, and I just don't think he was... I think he's got to have a proper look at himself in the mirror, as you say, because I think as soon as he went to Norwich, there does seem to have been a massive drop-off in his performances. But I think a lot of it is about how he was managed. I would, and I think you're exactly the same. I would have liked to have built a team around him.
I've got to be honest, whether or not it's with hindsight, I did say it's quite enough. I'd rather, to some extent, we hadn't loaned him back.
Yeah.
Just because I think it just made an odd decision. It just felt odd around the camp. It just felt odd in the stadium where Maddison could almost do no wrong before and then could do no right afterwards.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like if he played well, it was like, well, he should be playing well. If he played badly, we hammered him. Or not us, but as a group. And it just changed the way the season was going. It was also at a point where the season hadn't quite hit the shit yet. It was still in the lurch, but it was, again, it just gave that whole sort of with Coventry City, we've got a chance to do well, we've sold our best player. Oh, he's come back on loan. But it never... And then you had the whole farce with the amount of loans anyway, so...
Even though it didn't break up... Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Even though it didn't break up technically the team, I kind of felt like it did. It almost broke up the team spirit where I've said this before around sort of Reece Charles Cook looking forward to the future of having this team with all these players around him and almost feeling like Armstrong and Murphy were still part of that unit. Suddenly you're selling this player. He's now looking at Norwich. I'm sure him and Murphy are thinking about what life's going to be next year at Norwich. And it just, immediately you don't see the future. Whereas before, when he was our player, you kind of saw a future with all these players. And it kind of had a big impact for me.
Right, what's next?
And then the players, I know we're going backwards forward and people will shout at me in a minute. The players who were most up for the award of most hard done by were Tudguy, Phillips and Lemares. And just a one-word answer, who was the most hard done by this season?
I've already said Phillips, so yeah, that's my view.
I would possibly add Jim O'Brien into that mix, but of those three, I would say Lemaris. But with an honourable mention for Aaron Phillips, who I think deserves to be treated better.
I think all three are, I think you can make a case for all three. For me, the Ruben Lemares wins it for his performance against Sheffield United, and then to be dropped the game later.
Yeah.
It was up there with when Freddie Eastwood scored a hat-trick, and within a fortnight was back on the bench for, no reason. It's just... You've got your favourites, that's fine, but don't make it so obvious.
He's one of your signings as well. You bought him. You bought him, he came in, he did really well, and then nothing happened, and then you don't like him. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
The next, Ruben Matters, I had number 10, so the next 9 are players who are up for virtually, all the good awards. Some people, number 9 is Raider Johnson, who some people had as Player of the Year. Now, leaving his publicity aside, to be honest, I didn't care he went to watch Sheffield Wednesday away. Some players form affinities for former clubs. Cole Baker's formed an affinity for Coventry City. He's come to watch us play a couple of times while he was injured at Milton Keynes Dons. Probably not the same time Milton Keynes were playing, but, he's been in the ground. I don't see anyone kicking up a stink about that. I think maybe he should have gone to Doncaster, but only 400 fans went to Doncaster anyway.
What difference does it make? The whole thing smacks of... Sorry to go on about it, I'll try and keep it brief. The whole thing is this shitty thing that people have got about footballers, which comes back to earning money for some reason. If we're paying his wages, he should be going and watching him on a Saturday. Why? It's not his contract. He isn't going to make a difference to the team, whether he's there or not. Why wouldn't he just continue his rehabilitation in whatever way he wants to? It doesn't make any difference. And it just smacks of either jealousy or bitterness or... who cares?
That was a weird one. I mean, I tried to ignore it because of what it was. Did anybody mention Chris Stokes? The fact that he wasn't at the match and he was out and about tweeting and Instagramming at the same time.
No, I didn't hear anything.
So that just wasn't mentioned. Was it? So people were more annoyed the fact they went to watch another team, or just because he wasn't at the game?
I think it's a mixture of him having the shirt on and everything. But it just get a hobby.
I think I've got no issue with him going to watch another match. I mean, the only frustration I have maybe with that, but also with Stokes and also with the fact that our players was, in my mind, that game was one of probably the biggest game of the season for what it could have potentially left us with. So it kind of wrangles with me that most people didn't seem to put the same level of sort of, oh my God, are we going to win this match? I would have been all focused on that. So it annoys me a little bit where a player like Stokes is able to go out and walk his dog and stuff, where if that was me, I'd be sat at home listening to the radio thinking, Christ, I could, this could be big for Cov. But they weren't too bothered. But then again,
that's the absolutely crucial bit of it, isn't it? But that's not their fault.
No, not at all. I mean, the fact they went to watch a match.
From the top down should be, this season is on. This is still on, and it doesn't, until we physically haven't got any more points that we can pick up, we keep pushing really, really hard to get in the playoffs. And so we're all in it and we're all going. But if that's not the thing from the top down, why should they? And everyone could see that the wheels were falling off. It takes someone to step up and to have that big thing. But if that's not happening, go and watch Sheffield Wednesday. So Ridley Johnson was 9th.
And then the top 8 are all sort of... one of the 3 of us has nominated them in our top 5 players of the year, and they're the people who the audience... Our loyal listeners have voted Players of the Year. The only one who didn't get many votes, which we deliberated during our pre-pod tweet fest was the inclusion of Jim O'Brien. Now, I had him as number 5. Joey, you had him as number 4, and Neil, you didn't include him. But Jim O'Brien's very difficult. I thought he added something to the team that we badly lacked since he went, and that was physicality and general annoyance to the opposition.
Fight.
I just felt without him, we were too lightweight, and which is why we had to go towards playing Fortune a bit more and Tugguy a bit more. And when it ended up with the farce of Vinsley playing as a number 10, the only reason I just think he played that just because he wanted us to try and win the ball back higher up the pitch, and the person who led that was Jim O'Brien when he was with us, and I find the moving him on as very strange, but I don't know what you two think. I think Jim O'Brien deserves a lot of credit for the fact we will finish in the top half this season.
I think it's fair to include him in the list just because we're kind of judging a lot of these other players on their early season performances anyway. I mean, if we were judging them on second half performances, you're looking at Aaron Martin as your player of the year because he's the only one who's actually showed the level. Because he's not. I mean, he missed the first couple of months, but since he's come back, he's played brilliantly.
Yeah, he's been great.
So when you, I mean, on my list, I had Armstrong, Fleck, Vincelot, Murphy, and Stokes. A lot of that is just purely down to sort of picking off bits of impact and quality of performance and trying to tot it up over the course of the year. And sort of there's a cumulative effect where I think over the most amount of games, people like Fleck, Vincelot and Stokes have performed. And Jim O'Brien was one of those where he performed up until the time he left, really.
Because, I mean, the person directly above him is Jacob Murphy, who I think we all agree has tailed off. But again, I think when we were on form, when we were at our best, a lot of it was coming through Jacob Murphy, and you don't want that to be forgotten because he's had a major impact on our season. He's given us some brilliant moments, and obviously his performance against Gillingham will mark him down when we think about him in the future. But again, as I said earlier, I think you could be right. I mean, it could just be tiredness, and it's just all got a bit too much for him. But there's no denying that the player we're seeing at the moment and have seen for a couple of months is a pale comparison to the one who was loving life in late November.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the other thing with Jacob Murphy, just before we move on, is 10 goals. You just can't. Yeah, you just can't knock the contribution of when you look at so many. When we're talking about Ryan Kent only scoring 1, we don't have. And we're talking about sort of attacking with that 4. 10 goals is vital, isn't it?
It's like Mane yesterday scored the hat-trick, even though Shane Long was clearly the man of the match. You still give man of the match to the guy who scored all the goals, just because it's important. It makes he scored. It's quite important that people score goals, and he was, apart from Armstrong, our other threat.
Yeah, I think we've got into such a culture of football analysis that almost the physical act of putting the ball in the back of the net has taken a back seat to things like transition and breaking up play and stuff like that. I just actually 10 goals. That was the beauty of Frank Musa, wasn't it? Ultimately, I found him a difficult player to sort of quantify, except that his output was always really high, wasn't it? He was always making or scoring goals.
You've got to take that, haven't you?
Yeah, he'd float around the pitch like a madman, but ultimately that's fine. I can deal with that if you're productive. Yeah, Jacob Murphy there. Who's next?
It's going to be Aaron Martin, who a lot of people had for most improved player, sort of was quite high in the public vote for player of the year. I'm going to leave Neil to discuss Aaron Martin because I think he's been on the biggest journey with Aaron Martin.
Yeah, that's very true.
Talk about your journey with Aaron Martin.
Oh, that would be great. Him and his hair, brilliant. Yeah. He's taking a lot of room though.
He's a bloody lovely lad, isn't he?
Yes, Aaron Martin. No. Well, one of the categories that you mentioned was sort of most improved, and he stands out for me in that category just because I thought it was poor last year. I think some people weren't quite critical, but I don't think his distribution is that great, and I think this year in the games he has played, both in that period before Christmas where he came into the team, and people were very worried because we just lost, was it Ben Turner and Reader Johnson? We needed someone to step up. He came in was pretty flawless, really. And since he's come back, actually the second time around after that injury, to stand out in a team that's actually been playing really poorly is impressive. And I think he's understanding his own limitations a lot more now. And I don't want him to do what Jack Stevens does, and he's not doing it. He's not trying to run with the ball. He's just give the ball to someone else, and you do what you can do, which is actually read the game quite nicely, and make a nuisance of yourself. Make sure people don't get around you as easy as some of the defenders, Peter Ramage, has let them done in the past. So yeah, he's doing really well. Is he out of contract?
Yes.
Well, I would be snapping him up immediately.
Well, even if you don't think he's first choice next season, why letting him go? We've got no first choice centre halves, and you think, well, if we keep him, we only have to bring in 2 other centre halves.
Yeah.
And I think he's been second half of the season. If we were just going on the last 10, 15 games, I think there's only really Reece Charles Cook to rival him for Player of the Year. But over the season, I think he's shown enough.
I'm surprised at the number of games he's played. He's played 32 games.
Wow, that is a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, there's only 7 players who've played more than him, which seems odd, doesn't it? It feels like he missed a massive chunk of the season. But he's. I think as with a few on this list, when they and there are a lot of people who sort of shouts for players of the season. They're the people who haven't hit the absolute heights, but have never deviated from being solid and good, which I think is Stokes, Reece Charles Cook.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the top. We're on to the top 5 now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Top 5. There's one standout who is number 1, which is, I'm going to ruin it for everyone, is Armstrong. But I think that's pretty clear. I think, he's won most people's vote of Player of the Year, and you don't score 19 goals without, being best loan signing, best young player. I mean,
he better get his 20th against Oldham. It's away from home, so he's not going to, is he?
No.
I'm going to be furious if he doesn't get to 20.
Sorry,
he must be stuck. He must be stuck on 17 for about
a minute.
Sorry, go on.
The next 4 are very much. It's difficult to put them in an order. I mean, we'll go in the order. Next is Vincelo.
Okay.
I mean, obviously he's a player we know we've needed for a while. And
Are we?
Go on.
Are we talking about these? Are you running through? Because
we'll go for. So the next 4 are basically Vincelo, Reece Charles Cook, Fleck, and Stokes.
Okay.
So it's they could be literally in any order. I mean, I didn't have Stokes as high as everyone else does. I had Stokes. I don't have Stokes in my top 5. I think he's been a very solid left back. I just think that's all he's been. He's not been exceptional. He's not been stand out in many games. He's just been solid. And I wonder sometimes if we have lower expectations of Stokes, so he gets a bit more credit for the fact we don't think he's going to be as good as he is. And I don't think he's had a bad season. I think he's had a good season. I just didn't have him having as good a season as everyone else has. A lot of people have given him Player of the Year. I have nothing against that. For me, I just think there are other players who had more of an impact on the season.
I do a bit, not majorly, but I do a little bit. I just think it seems like I think it's reactionary. I think it's slightly short-sighted, and I think it's a bit reactionary because I think there's a suggestion there that and it goes back to my earlier point, that putting in a string of 6.5, 7 out of 10 performances from left back is better than scoring 20 goals in a season, which I just don't think is true. No, and secondly, that if you think that he sort of don't get me wrong, I'm not having to go at him because I think he's had a really, really good season, and I think he's proved a lot of people wrong. But ultimately, that's from the starting point of being a formerly non-league left back that people didn't have a great deal of faith in. What he's done is he's come through and solidified and gone, yeah, fair play, you're a pretty good League One left back. But Vincelo, at points this season, has looked like a like the best defensive midfielder in the league by some distance. I haven't seen many capable defensive midfielders like that in League One for years. And Fleck as well has been absolutely scintillating. Murphy at times has been unplayable. Yeah. Even Ruben Lameiras has looked, and O'Brien, Chris Stokes winning it for me, and a lot of people have gone for him. I get it. I just really disagree.
It's so Cov again, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, just bloody because it's like when we all adored Andy Morrell, and it's like, okay, he loves to run, and obviously he's trying his best, and he's just. We've got better players than that, and I love Chris Stokes as well. I think he's come along like leaps and bounds, and I love how he's always the first to get involved. If there's a little bit of argy-bargy, he's the one with his really red face, like steaming in, like, sorting it all out. I love that about him. But you can't say he's had a better season than Adam Armstrong, who's torn the defences apart. I mean, all Stokes has done is played most of the games until the last month, and played as we expected him to. So good on him, but. Him walking up to the stage, winning Player of the Season, when you've got like people like Adam Armstrong sat in the table, just wouldn't sit right with me at all.
We've had some wicked strikers in the last few years, haven't we? But there's stuff that Armstrong has done that none of the others have been able to do.
Oh, it's magic.
There's stuff that he has done this season that has been absolutely breathtaking. And I think you and I are more kindred in this. Is that I think it's about the magic for me. And Armstrong, whilst he has palpably tailed off during the second half of the season. That's magic right there. There's magic in them boots. Whereas Chris Stokes is the absolute opposite of that.
And also, we should say, like, everybody's tailed off. So just because Stokes has continued at that regulation level of 6 out of 10 every single game, doesn't matter really when you've got all the good stuff that's happened before that. Because what's happened really is like Armstrong's moved down to a 6 out of 10 as well. So he's still playing at a standard level, same as Stokes is, but. I'd be very, very frustrated if Stokes was to receive an award and people like Armstrong and even Jacob Murphy. I think you've got to recognise what he's done this year.
Paul, who would you go for?
I went for Restart Cook, my player of the year. I had Armstrong as second because I like Armstrong. I just think. There are certain question marks, and whether or not he was badly played at spells by Mowbray, whether or not he just couldn't quite work out how to play in certain games. I think he's now 10 or 11 games he hasn't scored in. I thought on Saturday was the first time I really saw a player who I didn't think should have been on the pitch, personally, at a point on Saturday. He didn't look interested, just looked like he felt the world was against him. And when he didn't get past at one point, he was just in a mega strop, which was fine, but he just looked like a player who had got to the end of the season and there was nothing to be gained by playing him, I didn't think. And there's been a couple of games of those recently. Wigan again, when he played on the wing, he just looked like a player who was trying. I'd never say he wasn't a player who gave 100%. I think he did. And I think that's a lot of credit to him. But I think there was a spell where it was just beyond where he needed to be playing. And I don't think he should have. I think he should have been taken out of the team a lot more than he was. And I think Mowbray made a really interesting point about he's the sort of guy who can get a goal out of nothing, and you just got a feeling he was left on the pitch to produce a moment of magic. Yeah. And I think that, and he must have known that at one point he was the only guy who was going to get us a goal, and that I don't think that expectation was fair on an 18, 19-year-old. And I do think he's an exceptionally talented player, and you don't get that work rate often from that sort of player. I look at him now and think I wouldn't play him. It's a tricky one. I want him to get his 20th goal against Oldham, but I think if you're going to play him against Oldham, you've got to play him up front, and you've got to give him the opportunity to play alongside players like Ramirez. I just think playing him on the wing with Tudgay or Fortuna out front is just pointless. And I don't think that's helped him recently.
I don't think there's another manager out there that would look at him and think I'll play him on the wing. I think it's unbelievable. I don't know what outside of his pace, but he's not a kick and run pace guy. I just don't see what anybody has seen in him and thought winger. It's absolute bullshit. He's a on the shoulder of the last defender striker. That is just what he is. I think it makes me quite cross when I think about the way that he's been misused at times this season. I just don't understand. The only other thing that I would say about it is if we had McGoldrick or Wilson still here, or Leon Clark or something, and it was a case of trying to fit everyone in the team, then maybe you'd be like, oh, I guess I can understand you trying to do whatever. But we have a proliferation of attacking midfielders and only one good striker. Play one good striker up front and use your attacking midfielders in attacking midfield. It's not. I don't see how there's any debate over it, Tony. If wherever you are, meet me for a coffee.
Listen to his tone.
Meet me for a coffee and we'll talk about it. I don't get it. You're right. I think don't play him out wide. He's not a wide player. It's lunacy.
All right, all the players, 3 remaining players discussing the top 5 are Vincelo, who you sort of touched on.
Sexy, next.
Yeah. And then there's Reece Charles Cook and John Fleck. I think I've expressed myself enough on John Fleck, so I'll let others discuss him. Reece Charles Cook, I think, has taken... What I like about Reece Charles Cook is he's taken his opportunity. There's no denying he went through a bit of a dip, but he's come out of it. He's matured a lot. He's still doing stupid things, like rolling the ball out of players who are marked and that sort of shit. But I think as a player, he really has upped his game, and we probably would be in a worse position without him, because he's made some very crucial saves. And as I said, in the last 3 games, he's really dominated his area really well when we've needed him to. And as Joey knows, I had my question marks over him when he first broke through. I was worried he was more mouth than trousers, but I'm happy to say he's proved me completely wrong. And when other people have dropped off, I think he's been brilliant the last couple of weeks. And I think he's definitely one of the players who we're really lucky to have going into next season.
You think now that he's got a really good mouth-trousers ratio, don't you?
I think there's less bluster there and there's more performance, and that's all I want out of my players. I don't care on Twitter or what they're doing on. It's amazing how many footballers are related at the moment, because everyone's bro.
I absolutely love this. Do you know how you can avoid that?
Follow on Twitter. I don't follow them. That's the thing. I don't follow them. I don't follow any of the players on Twitter or Instagram or anything. And then people retweet stuff. It's like, here I am with my bro Madders and my bro Ramirez scored. My bro this, my bro that. It's like, it's just that. Do you know what? A couple of things I'd ban for next season. I'd ban the fucking pre-match huddle. Do you want to know why I'd ban the pre-match huddle? Because they do the pre-match huddle at 3 o'clock when the rest of the country's kicking off. So it means all of our games are sodding late, which means I'd even fucking longer to get to Manchester. Just start with the huddle. The huddle doesn't mean shit. The huddle meant shit would be top. It's like, just stop with the damn huddle.
We're top of the huddle league.
Oh, it's just needless.
Huddle.
Anyway, you two, Vincelo, Aina, Reece Charles Cook and Fleck, discuss away.
I think I've talked about Reece Charles Cook, my feelings on him, so I'm going to leave it to Neil.
RCC is fine. Good player. Yeah. He's, you said it all, Paul. He started well. I think there's an element of luck about his first games. He went through a bit of a difficult patch, I think, when things started to go against him, but I think his raw technique has started to show in the last couple of weeks, months, and he's a very good keeper, and like you say, that he's first choice for next year, and there's no need to go messing around with anybody else really. He is the one that we need. Obviously, me and you, we disagree against Fleck about Fleck. He's our best player. I think he has bad games, but all told, great player, and I have him in there just because when he's good, and I'd say for the first part of the season, like we're judging most of these players on, when he was better than most players in the league. So yeah, that's my views on him. Neil out.
And like you say, I do disagree with Fleck a little bit. I kind of feel like he's my girlfriend, but that I'm sort of punching above my weight, but that I'm sick of him cheating on me. I know what's it. I kind of I'm in that thing where I'm like, well, I know that he's really good, but actually I don't know whether he just hurts me too much. So I'm going to I think I'm going to reluctantly say, I mean, not like it makes any difference what I want or think or anything, because he's just going to go. He's just going to go, isn't he?
He will go. Yeah. I'll judge him if he didn't go. If he's got any sense of ambition, why the bloody hell would you want to stay with us? The way our club is at the moment. I'd go do something good with your life.
Yeah, and it will be fascinating to see who he joins and how he gets on. What would be amazing, I think, would be if he goes to a middling championship club and excels, because then I think, as always, we'd have to take one massive look in the mirror there. But I don't think he will. I think he'll probably go to a middling championship club and sort of do what he does for us, which is be in and out a lot. When he's good, he's very, very good. When he's not, I think he's pretty crap.
I agree with Neil wholeheartedly. I think he should be looking to move on because he's now 24. If wherever another season in League Two, League One, sort of isn't going to prove anything. I think if he really does have aspirations of trying to make it at the highest level, he should be looking to go to a championship club and really kick on. Yeah. Because that's the only way he's going to make the move to the Prem. He's, if you're 17, 18, you can stand out in League One and get a move to the Prem. If you're 24, it's highly unlikely anyone from the Prem's going to take you on. You've got to earn it in the Championship, and I don't doubt the guy's got talent. I've never doubted the guy's got talent, and that's what pissed me off last season. Was the fact he wasn't shit, technically shit. He was just shit. And this season, there's been times where, he's done. The goal against Millwall is one of the finest goals I've ever seen live. It's just all that he's about. It's just fantastic technique from 35, 40 yards, and then. Also reminds me of the game against Oldham where he needlessly just went and kicked someone in the box and gave away a penalty with 9 minutes to go. I think that's what you get with Fleck. There is definitely extreme amount of talent in their legs. It's whether or not he has it in the rest of him to be a really good player. I don't know. Almost my same feelings with Jacob Murphy. I think it's not in his legs, it's in his head. Whether or not Jacob Murphy will have a good career.
I'm not sure as well I can ever forgive John Fleck for not scoring last season. I think that's, as much as that's like a silly flippant point, I just think, how are you not scoring all season playing in midfield? I don't know what, with your technique. And the fact that you don't take corners or free kicks or anything, I don't know. But anyway, we've talked about John Fleck enough. I think that's everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. Signing of the season would appear to be Vincelo, which I think we'd all agree with. But that was one of our first. He was our only moneyed signing, but he was also one of the first signings we made. It's interesting, and the same with Armour, who's loan of the season. It's interesting that very few players we signed. The only person competing with Vincelo for signing of the season is Stokes. And when you think how many other players we brought in during the season, it's interesting in that. None of them have been what could be deemed as a success. I mean, you think of the best players we've talked about in the top 5, in the top 10. Most of them were here at August or early September, start of the season. As our in-season signings tend to have been the worst signings or worst loans or players who didn't really live up to expectations, like Henderson. But
Stokes feels like a technicality to me.
Yeah,
it's like extending a contract almost. He was our player. We just kept him a bit longer.
But even he's out of contract, and you're wondering, he's a perfectly fine left back in League One. Do we think we're going to get better than Stokes, or are we worried that Stokes is going to leave, so we haven't offered him a new contract?
No, I think that what's it. The more supposedly the fear is that there's people looking at him, but
then why not sign him on? I suppose the thing is we don't really know what conversations have been held. But even if we'd have got promoted, you would have thought, okay, even if you don't think Stokes is championship quality, he's backup championship quality, surely.
It's surprising to see that there's not been much contract talk undergone already. Bearing in mind that they'd already given up on this season, you would have thought that they had have started to think about what League One looks like next season. Unless the problem is with anything like this, they might literally just be waiting for pen to be put to paper. So it's not. I guess us speculating on it is almost moot because we don't know enough. But I think players like Stokes and Martin, it is somewhat concerning that they're running out of contract and that they're not signed up, because they're two players who I absolutely would like to see here next season.
What worries me is someone like Sam Ricketts, who we didn't really discuss, who a lot of people have got as their didn't live up to expectations, and some even had as sort of worse signings. It's just he's the sort of player you can. And I also don't think Mowbray managed him particularly well.
I'm looking at time, and I think, bearing in mind that we're going to do sort of part 2 of the season sort of roundup, I feel like Ricketts probably deserves his own section next week. Yeah,
in next week's show.
Yeah, I think that he's had a very, very, very strange season. A very strange season indeed, hasn't he? It's like he is the sort of physical embodiment of how this season has gone, isn't he?
Yeah, and also, I mean, it'd be interesting to discuss Mowbray next week, especially, I just find it really strange with managers, and while we lead into next week, I'll just leave it with, I find it really odd that he goes, I'm inexperienced at this level, and I'm talking about next week, but this is my final point on it, and he goes, and we sign 18, 19-year-olds, and they couldn't last all season, we'll bear that in mind next season. And you're like, so if he'd have signed an 18-year-old as his main striker in the Championship, does he think he'd have lasted all season in form? Or do you just think it's League One that doesn't quite work in?
Right, shall we wrap this up then? I mean, I don't think anybody wants to hear us do an Oldham preview, do they? We're 45 games through the season. People, it almost doesn't matter, does it?
No. They know.
That's fine. Either of you two got anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Not me.
No.
If you want to get in touch with us, neilhampshireshow@gmail.com or at neilhampshireshow on Twitter. If you want to hear anything specific in the final podcast of the season, any final sort of season analysis, let us know and we'll try and cover that for you. Aside from that, I guess it's just God. So aside from that, thank you, Paul and Neil.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you for listening. Bye.